and individual achievement. And he addresses over 250,000 people worldwide every year. Since he began recording and taping his material, he's become one of the most listened to professional speakers in the world. His audio and video programs have been translated into 20 languages and are heard in over 38 countries. He's the author or narrator of such best-selling audio programs as Psychology of Achievement, Psychology of Selling, Psychology of Success, as well as The Science of Self-Confidence, How to Master Your Time, How to Start and Build Your Own Successful Business, and get this, more than 250 video training programs on leadership, sales, and personal performance. He's written 34 books, been translated into 23 languages. He's the creator of the personal coaching system Focal Point. He's traveled and worked in more than 80 countries, and he speaks 4 languages. He was the chief operating officer of a $265 million development company. He's active in community affairs. And probably the most important thing for Brian is that he's married with 4 children, and of course he is the president of 3 companies headquartered in Solana Beach, California. It is a great privilege for me. I just met him for the first time today, so I'm excited to hear from him as well in person. Please welcome to the Weekend Leadership event, Mr. Brian Tracy.
I love you guys. Thank you. Sit down. Please sit down. I have some good news for you. More people are going to make more money in the next few years and become millionaires than in all the years of American history. And 80% of those people, 4 out of 5, are going to be people like yourself who own their own businesses and who come to these seminars. And my job is to help you to be one of those millionaires, and your job is to learn what you need to learn and to apply. Is that a good goal for our 2.5 hours together? Say yes. Now, when Kyle invited me to come here to speak, he said, you know, this is a very, very high-class audience. It's a very elite group. They're in the top 5 or 10% of people in America. He said they're all millionaires. And so I want you to know it's a real big honor to be here with so many millionaires, because what I've discovered since I got here this morning is that everybody here is a millionaire, or you intend to be in the future. Is that correct? Say yes. Okay. Now, I can't tell you how important that is, because future intention determines present action. Please remember this. Future intention determines present action. If you decide you're going to leave this convention center and you're going to drive to San Diego, it will tell you what turn you will take when you go out of the hotel, and at the next corner and the next corner. Every single step you take in the short term will be determined by where you're heading for. If you decide you're going to go to San Francisco, you will take totally different turns. Are you with me so far? So therefore, future intent determines present action. I work with Bill Danko, and Bill Danko is the co-writer of The Millionaire Next Door. He has spent his entire life, 30 years, studying self-made millionaires. I have been reading his stuff like a person chasing after him. I've been reading their stuff and their research all this period of time to find out about self-made millionaires. And what I found out is some very interesting things. First of all, they all have certain qualities in common. Second of all, nobody started off with any of these qualities. Third of all these qualities are learnable. Can anybody here drive a car? It's a rhetorical question. If you don't raise your hand, I know you're really tired. You had a long night. Well, if you can drive a car, you can learn any business skill. You can learn any financial skill. If you can drive a car, you can learn enough to become a self-made millionaire. In the year 1900, there were 5,000 self-made millionaires in America. By the way, all millionaires in America, almost all, are self-made. When I was young, I used to feel sorry for myself because I didn't have any money. Wah, 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 wah. And then I found that nobody has any money. Everybody starts off broke. As a matter of fact, if you look at what the Founding Fathers wrote, the Founding Fathers designed America to be a country where people could come with nothing, basically with satchels, everything they owned, off a boat at Ellis Island, and they could start off here, and by working hard, and as Chris said, by developing character and talent and working hard, telling the truth, and paying as little taxes as possible, they could eventually become prosperous and successful, if not millionaires. So don't feel sorry for yourself, by the way, if you started off with difficult circumstances. Now, I'm going to get off the track a little bit here, but first point is this, is everybody starts off broke. Most Americans like broke so much they keep going back to it throughout their adult lives, you know, like visiting the old hometown. But here's the point, and there's a wonderful line from Joe DiMaggio. Joe DiMaggio once said, he goes, there's no rich men's sons in the major leagues. He said they don't have the stomach for it. He said they don't have the hunger. They don't have the guts. They don't have the drive. He said rich men's sons grow up soft. He said all the hitters in the major leagues grew up hard. So if you had a difficult childhood and you didn't have a lot of money and your mommy and daddy didn't love you the way you wanted them to love you and so on, if you had a difficult childhood coming up, you should thank God every single morning because it's given you the character and the guts and the determination and the grit that will enable you to be successful. Yes. The worst thing that can happen is to grow up easy. Grow up hard. If you grow up hard, then you'll always be able to bounce back because you've done this before. Anyway, so there were 5,000 millionaires in 1900. In the year 2000, there were 5 million. By the year 2010, 2020, there'll be 10 or 15 million millionaires. And your job is to be one of those millionaires, and my job is to get you there. Now here's a question. How many people like to double their income? You say yes? Okay. If I could show you how to do it, would you give it a try? Now, that is a test question. It's the only test question of the day. Do you know what the average number of times is that a person tries on a new goal before they give up? It's less than 1. Most people give up before they try it even once. Is they say, I'm going to set a new goal and I'm going to dedicate myself to doing this, more of this, less of that. They hear these wonderful talks by Jim and Dennis and Chris, and you hear these wonderful talks. They think, well, I'm going to make some decisions. But most people don't even try the first time. They talk themselves into it at the seminar and they talk themselves right back out of it on the way home. And they think of all the reasons why it's not possible. You know, there's a disease that plagues America. It's called excusitis. It's the inflammation of the excuse-making gland. Which is invariably fatal to success. Now here's the worst thing. Not only do they talk themselves out of it and don't do it, but someone else says, I'm going to do that. I'm going to lose that weight and save that money and start that business and so on. I said, no, it won't work. It won't work. What do you mean it won't work? Well, I thought about doing it once too. Did you ever do anything about it? No, I didn't, but I knew it wouldn't work. And so they take great delight in talking other people out of it. That's why it's so important to associate and affiliate with the people who are here. One of the things I learned from Jim Rohn many years ago is get around the right people. Get around the right people. If you want to know where the right people are, turn to the left, turn to the right, right? These are the right people. People you associate with, as Chris was saying, your relationships will determine the quality of your life more than any other single factor. So, I have some good news for you. Everybody here is going to double their income. I have it on good statistical evidence. Everybody here is going to double their income. Yes, yes. If you live long enough. The average person's income goes up in America about 3 to 4% a year. So if you work for another 18 to 22 years, 3 to 4% a year, compound interest, you'll double your income. Is this what you had in mind? Say no. No. When do we want to do it? Now. All right. Now, I have to show you something. This is a chart. I hired a consultant to come in and work for me some years ago when Dale and I were working together, and he was going to study every part of my business. At the end of it, he left me with a lousy T-shirt and this graph and a bill for several $1,000s. But I think the graph was worth it because the graph is a picture that once you have it, you could apply it not only to your life but to different aspects of your life. And I'll show you what this graph is. This is the graph of income. So let's just say, imagine that this is the amount of income that you make in the course of your life, and this is where you start, and this is time. These are the years of your life. And this is where you end up at the end of your life. Now, there's all kinds of different incomes. Here's what we have discovered, by the way, is that each person decides where they're going to be on the income graph. By the things that we do, and by the things that we fail to do, and often the things that we fail to do have a worse effect on our life than the things that we do, but by the things we do or fail to do, the choices and decisions we make or don't make determine how much we earn. People say, no, my income is determined by my industry. No, because there's people in your industry making 10 times as much as you. There's people in your industry making half as much as you. So we decide where we will be in the long run. Now, we don't decide it overnight, but we decide where we'll be in the long run. So what we find is that everybody starts off earning something, okay? You start off with your first job, and then most people's financial life is very much like the weather. It's unpredictable. It's sort of like a bad week on the NASDAQ. Their financial life is like this. It goes up and down, and sometimes they're in the money, sometimes they're out. Sometimes they're broke, sometimes they're unemployed, sometimes they're employed, making bonuses and so on. This is their financial life. Sometimes they're the windshield, sometimes they're the bug. And isn't that a true statement? And at the end of a person's life, as a result of experience, plus luck, this is where most people end up. Fully 50% of baby boomers, according to the recent study, do not have a penny put aside for retirement, and they're pushing 55. They don't have a penny put aside. You all know the statistics, and these people are living on experience and luck. Well, this works out to be an average of about a 3% increase over the course of your lifetime. You know what the word job stands for. J-O-B says just over broke, okay? Nobody ever makes any money at a job. Nobody ever gets ahead. All you do is you keep your nose just above the waterline. That's all you do, and you hope that there's no storms. Because if there's a storm, suddenly, okay. Well, so this is the way most people live their lives. Now, it's very much, we say that most people's financial lives are like backing up in a car at night and hitting something. Whoomp, and you get out to see what it is, and it's a new job. Or it's a new marriage, or a new relationship, or a new investment, or something else, all right? Now you're driving along. Now imagine this. Imagine that this is like a back road in the farm country. You're driving along these rutted out, beat to heck back roads in the country, and you have no road map and you have no road signs. So you're lost most of the time financially. This is the story of most people. So they're lost and they have no road maps and no road signs, and it's a terrible road. Well, even if you're driving a brand new Mercedes-Benz, an absolutely beautiful car, engineered perfectly in every way, which is what your mind is. Your mind is the most incredible device for success, achievement, happiness, and long life in the whole world. You're driving with this incredible mind. You're driving a Mercedes-Benz. Even if you're sincere and hardworking and determined and honest and all of those good things, if you're lost on the back road with no road signs and no road maps, you'll never make any progress. Are you with me so far? Please stay with the analogy. Now, let's say you're driving along and you've been working for 10, 20, 30 years, and there are people who've been working 10, 20, 30 years, and they still don't have a pot to you-know-what in or a window to throw it out of. We're living in the most affluent country in the history of man on earth. People from 194 countries dream of coming here. We're living here surrounded by affluence that is unimaginable, and most people worry about money all the time. Now, we did a little bit of background research on you before you came here. We did some checking on you, and we found, this will come as a shock to you, there are people in this very room who worry about money all the time. Yes, and we know who you are. We are watching you. All right. So you're driving along, and your navigator says, honey, you know, this kind of living is lousy. I'm tired of worrying about there being too much month at the end of the money, and so on. And you know, as we're driving along here, lost in these backwoods, I see this freeway over here. There's a freeway over there. I see cars just whipping along that freeway. Every so often I see them through the trees, or I get a glimpse of those cars just whipping along. If we could get onto that freeway, we could really make a lot of progress. So how do we get onto the freeway? Well, let's find a way, and you work your way across country, and you finally find the way onto the freeway. Now that's what this weekend is. This is the freeway. My talk is part of the freeway process, is to get onto the freeway. Now you get onto the freeway, you put your pedal to the metal, and suddenly you are making incredible progress. You are moving along, and this is the result of knowledge plus skill. That's the difference, is once you get onto the freeway of life, you start to go faster and faster and make more and more progress. I have spent a lot of time in Germany. In Germany they have the Autobahns, and you're familiar with the Autobahns. The Autobahns have no speed limit. As a matter of fact, the Autobahns, it is illegal for you to stay on the inside lane. If somebody comes up behind you and you stay in the inside lane and do not let them through, you'll be ticketed and punished, and they fine you enormous amounts. In other words, nobody can stop anybody from going as fast as they want. You want to drive 200 miles an hour, nobody's allowed to stay in front of you. And it'd be good regulation here, wouldn't it? Is nobody's allowed to be in the center line if somebody's coming up behind them. Anyway, in there they don't have accidents, by the way. They have disasters. If a car crashes, they don't send a tow truck, they send a scraper. They just scrape up the pieces and the parts. Anyway, but imagine you're on the Autobahn of life, and you can go faster and faster and faster, straighter and straighter, faster and faster. Now this is what happens with knowledge and skill. You see, once you get the knowledge, you can use it over and over again. But you've got to get it first. Once you get it, you can use it over and over again. And as you use it, you get better and better at it. As you get better and better at it, you get more and more results in less time with less investment of time and money. Are you with me so far? That is why people who start to make a little bit of money, then make a little bit more, then make a little bit more, then make a little bit more, they go faster and faster and faster because they get better and better and better at using the skill of making money. And all business skills are learnable. All money-making skills are learnable. So anyway, you're driving along, you whip along here. Now, here's my pretty critical point, is the people who are on the freeway of life are not smarter or better than people who are on the back roads. As a matter of fact, there are many people who are on the freeway of life. A person, to use an example, a person driving a rusted out jalopy, belching smoke, wheels falling off, terrible mechanical condition, will make more progress on the freeway than a genius driving a Mercedes-Benz on the back roads. Are you with me so far? There's nothing that will make you madder than to meet somebody who's dumber than you, making more money than you. Have you had that experience? Yes. And you look at this person, the person is an idiot. They can't find their bum with both hands, you know, and they're making more money than you. And why? It's because they have gotten off the back roads and onto the Autobahn. And that's why people want to come here from all over the world. You know, we talk about the American dream. The American dream. The American dream. Do you know something? There's no other country that has the word dream after its name. There's no Japanese dream, Chinese dream, German dream, Lebanese dream. There's no Nigerian dream or British dream. There's only one country in the world that has the American dream. And it's when Chris was talking about, yeah. And so I've given this a lot of thought, and I can come to the conclusion that the American dream is basically two things. Many other things too. It's two things. First of all, it's freedom. Like Braveheart, remember Braveheart? Freedom! We love to be free. So you get onto the high road of life and you go faster and faster and faster. Now our job is to get onto the high road, and the key to getting onto the high road is knowledge and skill. Now here's the difference, and this I don't know if you can pick this up, but this is the amount of money that you'll earn through the course of your life. It becomes more and more and more and more, and this is the amount that you'll end up with at the end of your lifetime. And this is controlled. Being on the back roads, the farm roads of life, are random, but being on the high road of life is controlled. And your job and my job is to get our finances under control, to get going straight ahead, to make every effort count, to make more and more money, and to end up financially independent. So the American dream is two things: freedom and financial independence. We want to have enough money so we can order from the menu without looking at the right-hand column to see how hungry we are. We want to have enough money so we never have to worry about money again. Is that a good goal? Say yes. Now remember, everybody starts off behind the eight ball. The very few people that start off with money usually lose it fairly quickly. They blow it, they burn it up, and so on. It's all, but people who've had to earn it the hard way can keep it. So our job is to get there. Now I have to ask you another question. Who's the most important person in this room? Well, do you know something? You're right. You are the most important person in this room. You are really, really important. You are so important it is unbelievable. To yourself, you're the most important person in the whole universe. There's a definition in the dictionary called a solipsist, who practices solipsism. And a solipsist is a person who believes that they are the center of the known universe. And solipsism believes that everything in the universe revolves around them. Most of these people get into politics or show business. But we, to a greater or lesser degree, the word comes from the Greek, is we are all solipsists. We all see the world from ourselves. So in terms of your own self, you are the most important person in this room and the most important person in the world. But in terms of your family, you're very important. In terms of your parents, from the time you were a child, your friends, your customers, your co-workers, the things that you do make you a terribly, terribly important person. And the reason that I emphasize this is because how important you feel you are is the critical determinant of how much success you'll have in life. How important you feel you are, how much you like yourself and respect yourself, is the critical determinant of everything that happens to you. You know, and Dennis has taught this, and Jim has taught this, and I've taught this. For me, it's one of the great revelations is your level of self-esteem, how much you like and respect yourself, determines the entire quality of your life. That everything we do in life is either to raise our self-esteem or to protect it. And so the more you like yourself, the more you value yourself and see yourself as an important person, the more you like other people. And the more you like others, the more they like you, and they want to be around you and associated with you and buy from you and recommend you to their friends. There's another thing, is that self-esteem is very closely correlated with self-confidence. Is the more you like yourself, the more confidence you have. The more you like yourself, the more you bounce back from rejection and failure and disappointment. Now, everybody in life is going to get knocked down 1,000 times. The only question is how many times you get back up. And the more you like yourself, the more you realize that failure is never final, as Dennis says, is that failure is merely a form of feedback, is that problems are simply learning experiences. So what you do is, if you really like yourself, you say, whoa, that hurt, ouch, get back into it. And so the more you like yourself, the better you perform at everything you do. So I want you to say the words, because the things that you say to yourself have an inordinate power in your emotions. Say, I like myself. No. Let's take our thumbs out of our mouths. Let's try it one more time. All right? Say, I like myself. I like myself. Wonderful. Now, from now on, as you go through the day, say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. Do you know that every single language where I've taught this, in every single language, you can't say it without smiling to yourself? It is almost like taking a mental vitamin pill. You take it and you like yourself. As a matter of fact, there's an interesting thing. Our greatest, and Chris was talking about this, and other people talk about it, our greatest obstacles to success are our fears. Fears of failure, fears of loss, fears of making a mistake, and so on. But the more you like yourself, the less you fear. If the higher your self-esteem, the lower your level of fears. And so whenever you're feeling a little nervous or uncomfortable, or you're making a presentation, say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. Get yourself pumped up. I like myself, I like myself. Go into a mirror, and I don't advise you to doing this in public washrooms or elevators. But as you walk on, say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. And what you do is you pump up your psyche. You pump up your self-esteem. I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, I like. Now, there are mornings when you get up and you will not say, good morning, God. You'll say, good God, it's morning. And so what you say is, oh boy, I feel terrible, but I like myself. I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. And you get yourself pumped. And the wonderful thing is, do you know what the key to human relations is? The key to human relations is to make other people feel important. Dale Carnegie's breakthrough book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, says make others feel important. And how do you make others feel important? You build their self-esteem. You give them praise and appreciation and compliment. You thank them. You say kind things to them. Zig Ziglar once said this wonderful line. He said, you can never be too fair or too kind to other people. Never be too fair or too kind. When in doubt, always be even fairer, always be kinder. And why? Because when you're kind to people and generous to people and warm and complimentary, you build their self-esteem. And here's this wonderful thing in psychology, is everything you do that builds the self-esteem of another builds your own. Everything that you do that makes another person feel happier about themselves make you feel happier about yourself. So you find that really successful people, everywhere they go, people just brighten up and smile because they're friendly, they're warm, they're courteous. I have met, and Chris talks about this, I have met and worked with many of the great billionaires, and most of them self-made billionaires in the United States. And I find that every single case, when you meet with these people, and sometimes I spent several hours with them talking about their business alone in a room with the telephones off, and I found that in every case, and I think of these people, they shine in my mind, they're all warm, friendly, kind. If you didn't know that these people were some of the richest people in the world, if you didn't know in advance, there's no way you could tell from meeting them because they're just such nice people. And so now which comes first, being a really genuinely nice person and being a great success, or being a great success and then becoming a nice person? By the way, there's a rule that says this, the success does not change you, it just makes you more of what you already are. So if you're a really nice person, you become successful, you'll be a nicer person. If you're a jerk and you become successful, you become a bigger jerk. You know, you go to Hollywood, right? Okay. Anyway, so the fact is that you are the most important person here. And whenever you feel yourself a little bit down, just say, hey, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. You take control of your mental life by putting your hands on the wheel and say, well, I like myself. Failure is only feedback. Learn from every experience. Get up, get going, and so on. Okay, is this important? You get this? Okay. Now, next question. How many people here are self-employed? Well, Dale, what's the true answer to that question? We all are. We all are. The worst mistake you could ever make in your whole life is to ever think you work for anyone else but yourself. As a matter of fact, your job is not only to be self-employed, but to be unemployable. Right? Where you just simply can't work for anybody else. You can only work for yourself. And it's interesting, it's the attitude. Chris was talking about attitude. It's the attitude of self-employment that separates the winners from the non-winners. It's top people, and according to the studies, the top 3% of adults see themselves as self-employed, even if they work for another company, even if someone else signs the paycheck all their lives. They see themselves as self-employed. They see themselves as in charge of their own life. And I have thought about this over and over again, and one of the great turning points in my life was this, is when I realized that I was responsible for everything that happened to me. I was in charge. I was self-employed. And the acceptance of total responsibility is one of the great scary thoughts, but one of the great liberating thoughts of life. And so I found that really high performers, all leaders, all men and women of great accomplishment, men and women of strength and character, men and women who accomplish great things, are people who are highly self-responsible. It is the key to success, and I'll come back to this a little bit later. So here are the words that you use. The words are, I am responsible. Say it. I am responsible. Oh, no. Try it again. One more. I am responsible. I like myself. And I'm responsible. Go Those are the keys to success. As long as you hold on to those, whenever you have a problem or difficulty of any kind, you'll go back to that. I like myself and I'm responsible. If there's something in my life that's not working, then by gum, it's up to me to change it. I'm not going to sit here and moan and cry and weep and moan and blame other people. I just get busy and do something about it. All successful people are take-charge people. And these are really, really important in terms of becoming a millionaire. Can you imagine a milquetoast billionaire? A person who does not accept responsibility with low self-esteem? No. You've got to have a person who really likes themselves and who really feels in charge of their own life. One last question. What is the most important part of this weekend? You're right. It's what you do afterwards. It's not what we learn, it's not the pleasure that we have, it's not the interaction, it's what you do afterwards. Now, I've learned a very interesting point, and this has been borne out in 50 years of study. The one most identifiable quality of successful people is that they're intensely action-oriented, is they're moving fast, they're in action. They hear a good idea, they move quickly. They don't sit there and think about it. When you sit there and think about it, what happens is the energy goes away. So you'll find that the most important part of today is what you do afterwards and how fast you do it. Now let me ask you a question. If you take action on any item, any idea, only two things can happen. What are they? You succeed or you fail. Okay? It works or it doesn't work. If it works, what do? You do more of it. If it doesn't work, what do? You learn from it quickly, get smarter, and try something else. But you cannot lose from taking action. You can only lose from not taking action. And when I spoke many years ago to one of the richest men in the world, he's now worth about $5.4 billion, and at that time he was just building his company was just growing. He said, you know, they have found in their company that people who hear a new idea and take action quickly will succeed. He said, but people who hear a new idea and don't take action immediately will probably not take action on that idea at all and won't take action on anything else either. The one thing they've identified in successful people is that they're all intensely action-oriented. So always think in terms of what action do I take? What do I do now? Somebody comes to you with a problem. They say, I've got this problem. Wham, wham, wham. I say, good. What are you going to do about it? What's your next step? What's your next action step? How are you going to solve the problem? In other words, keep helping people think in terms of the actions that they're going to take to achieve their goals or resolve their problems. And you lead by example. As Albert Schweitzer said many years ago, he said, you must teach men at the school of example, for they will learn at no other. So the most important thing that you do for your friends and for your family is be an action-oriented person. Be a high self-esteem, high responsibility, action-oriented person. Those are the three qualities for financial success. Probably the three qualities for all kinds of success. Does it make sense so far? Yes. Say yes. Yes. Okay. Now, let me just go back quickly to my own story. I did not have an auspicious beginning. I grew up in a family that had no money. Our favorite theme song in our family was "We Can't Afford It, We Can't Afford It, We Can't Afford It, We Can't Afford It." In every tune and bar, does anybody growing up in a family, that was your theme song, "We Can't Afford It"? And I'm still now, and even at my age, I still go and I look at the time and I go, geez, we can't afford it. What do you mean you can't afford it? It's a newspaper, for Christ's sake. Maybe I'll read somebody else's, you know? I mean, that costs 50 cents. Anyway. My friend Susie Orman said this. She said, one of the most important things in becoming wealthy is to deal with your goblins with regard to money. Almost all of us have goblins with regard to money. Fears, emotions, go back into our early childhood, the way our parents responded to money, what happened with money, did we not have very much, did we lose it, were our parents hurt financially? So we grow up with these fears with regard to money, and in order to become financially independent, you have to get over those fears. You have to first of all identify what they are. What is the number one fear with regard to money? Yeah, fear of poverty. We're afraid of being poor. We're afraid of not having any money. We're afraid of being destitute or dependent upon someone else. Now, it's not likely to happen, but nonetheless, that fear, which is an irrational fear, often holds us back from taking chances. And it's just something you have to identify. And I learned many years ago that if you have the fear of poverty, you say, all right, what's the flip side of the fear of poverty? What's the virtue of the fear of poverty? What's the good part of being afraid of not having money? What's the good part? Yeah, you work harder to get more money. You work harder and you're smarter in holding on to the money. You build up a financial estate. So starting off poor, as I said before, can often be a very good thing because it makes you very smart about making money and holding on to it. So in other words, when you talk about money like that, you bring it to the surface of your mind and you become free from the fears that are involved. That's no extra charge for that, just to throw in. Okay, so I started off with no money. I did not graduate from high school. I finished in the half of the class that makes the top half possible. They say that everybody serves some purpose, even if it's to be a bad example, and I was the bad example. The teachers would point to me and say, if you don't smarten up, you'll end up like him. And that would scare people, like the boogeyman under the bed. I mean, scare kids into doing their assignments. I had a chance to go to several schools when I was growing up because I kept getting thrown out of them. Suspended, expelled, rejected, suspended, expelled, rejected, and finally I left school and I got a job, a laboring job. I was told, by the way, that if you don't get a good education and get good grades, you won't do well in school. If you don't get good grades and do well in school, you won't get a good job, you won't go to college, you won't have a good life. So I've been told this all my life. You know, they tell you that, to tell kids that to scare them. So you grow up and they say, I didn't get very good grades in school. And by the way, remember I told you about the research that we did on you? Yes, we found some other interesting things. We found there are people in this very room who did not get good grades in school. Yes, and we know who you are. We were amazed at how many of you there are. It was astonishing. Anyway, and here's what I learned later in life. It took me about 10, 15 years to learn this, is there's no relationship between grades in school and success in life, unless you believe there is. If you believe that because you got poor grades you can't be successful, that becomes your truth. As William James of Harvard said, belief creates the actual fact. If you believe it, it becomes true for you. But there's no relationship at all. There's no relationship between anything that happened in your past and your present moment. You can decide at this moment that that was then, this is now. And you can go in a different direction. And your grades have no relevance. Forbes does the Forbes 400 every single year, and they do brief biographies of people in the Forbes 400. They found that people who dropped out of high school, if they make it to the Forbes 400, the 400 richest men and women in America, they will be worth, on average, $300 million more than people who graduated from college if they dropped out of high school and they made it. And they said, why is that? Well, they started earlier and they started harder. And they got much smarter, much faster. They had a big leap on people who are still going to college, drinking, and so on. They're already there starting their third or fourth or fifth business because they dropped out of high school. So if you got lousy grades in school, you should say, thank God I got lousy grades in school. Because that's the key to your success. All right, so anyway, my first job was a laboring job. I was washing dishes. I washed dishes, and then finally when I lost that job, I got a job washing cars with a car wash, and when I lost that job, I got a job washing floors with a janitorial service. I thought washing was in my future. My wife is very kind about that. She keeps giving me things to wash, dishes, children's bottoms, things like that. And lost when you're young is a euphemism for non-voluntary career redeployment. This is where you get a chance to explore new careers unexpectedly. Today they have severance programs to the end of the month. The severance program was to the end of the day. Or sometimes the end of the hour. They used to fire you at either 5 to 12 or 5 to 5. I know because I had experiences of both. And they come up to you looking like you'd been sentenced to death and they were the executioner, and they say, we won't need your services anymore, here's your final pay, there's the door. So I'd go from place to place, and I'd say, I'm looking for a job, and they say, well, we don't need much help right now. I say, well, I'm the right person for you, because I won't be much help. And that wasn't helping me much, and I went from place to place, desperate, lined up for employment, did day labor, worked as a gardener, I dug ditches, I worked as a construction laborer, carrying heavy things from place to place. I worked in sawmills stacking lumber, I worked in the brush with a chainsaw. One summer I dug wells. Now digging wells is like a metaphor for government service. That's where you start at ground level and you work down rather than up. And when you succeed, you fail, because when you find water, they fire you. Well, what's that? Looks like water. Well, cover it up. We need 2 more days' work here. Well diggers are not highly motivated, because if they find water, they put themselves out of work. It's like in the government, you're allowed to tinker with problems endlessly, but never solve one. Because if you solve a problem, then you put otherwise unemployable people out of work. So I would go from place to place. I worked on farms and ranches. When I was 23 years old, I was an itinerant farm laborer. I was sleeping on the hay in the farmer's barn. I was arising before dawn each morning and working all day to get the harvest in before the first frost. I ate with the farmer's family in the kitchen of the farmhouse. I was uneducated, I was unskilled, and at the end of the harvest, I was once more unemployed. And when I could no longer get a laboring job, how many people here are in sales? Well, that's what I got into too, when I couldn't get a laboring job, so I know where you're coming from. Yeah. And so I got into selling, and I was not afraid to work. Did you notice that selling is clean work? It's not digging ditches, it's not farm labor, it's clean work. So they gave me the 3-part sales training program, which is pretty much what we get in life. Here's your cards, here's your brochures, there's the door. After 1 month, they give you the first motivational program, which is, hang in there. After 2 months, they give you the real motivational program, is they sit you down and they look at you quite grimly and they say, look, if you don't sell something, pretty soon we'll have to fire you. They're not even paying you anything. You're working on straight commission, cold calling, and they're going to fire you. You don't even have a desk. Now, that sometimes makes you so mad you go out and sell something just to spite them. All right? Well, I was hanging on by my fingernails. After about 6 months, it's a really important point for me. After about 6 months of hanging on by my fingernails, when I made a sale, I had to have the commission immediately because I had to get back to my boarding house. I was paying a couple of dollars a night for a room in a boarding house, and I had an ex-Gestapo landlady. Her motto was no pay, no stay, no credit, nothing. So finally, there's this one guy in our company. He's making 5 or 10 times as much as anybody else. He's got a pocket full of $20 bills that would choke a horse. I get up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm out there in the parking lot at 7 o'clock when people come to work. I'm working all day. I take a brief lunch, dinner between 5 and 6, and I go and knock on doors and apartment doors in the neighborhoods after dinner until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. If the light was on, I'd knock on the door. I even woke people up in their pajamas to try to sell to them. Not a good start for a sales conversation. And this guy would roll in around 9 o'clock. Prospect would come in around 9:15. They'd sit down, have a nice little chat, cup of coffee. He'd talk to him a little bit, write some on paper, and pull out his check and write a check. And he'd go out in the morning and make a couple of sales, come back, have lunch with a customer, make another sale, make a couple of... I was making one sale a week. This guy was selling with both hands like a faro dealer in Reno. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I finally, and everybody looked at him, and great, So finally I went to him and I said, tell me, what are you doing differently from me? How come you make so many sales? And he said, well, show me your presentation. I'll critique it for you. I said, you show me yours and I'll show you mine. I said, by the way, how do you define a sales presentation? He said, well, a sales presentation is a logical and orderly process where, first of all, you separate prospects from suspects. You then establish rapport with them. You don't try to make friends with people who have no money, I mean, obviously, or not qualified. You then identify their needs by asking them questions. You show that our product or service is the very best, all things considered, to satisfy their needs. You answer their questions or objections. You get them to take action, and then you get resales and referrals from the same people, which loops you back into prospecting. I couldn't believe it. I was writing this all the time. There's a logical process to it. I couldn't believe there was a logical process to it. I was using the blah, blah cell. Blah, 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 blah. I was hoping people would stop me and buy, and nobody was. So I wrote it all down. I said, well, don't you say this? He said, no, you don't say this. You ask questions. And so I realized that telling is not selling. Asking questions is selling. So I went out and I began to ask questions, and I would go through a logical process and make sure it was a prospect before I began talking, and then take some time to get to know them a little bit better so that we had a feeling of rapport and so on, and then identified their needs, and my sales started to inch up. And then I said, well, what else can I do? He said, have you read any books on selling? I said, are there books on selling? Well, there's thousands of books on selling. They've been written by some of the best salespeople in the history of the world. So I went out and began reading 1 to 2 hours every single morning. I'd get up at 5 o'clock and read 2 hours every morning and take notes and write them on 3x5 cards and carry them around with me. And I learned what to say and how to answer objections, how to get appointments, and how to work on the telephone. And my sales began to go up. And then I began to listen to audio programs. I still remember my first audio programs on sales. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. Here's somebody who worked for 30 years, trained 20,000 salespeople, was able to make sales, go into a town with 350 homes and make 346 sales, cold calling, knocking on doors. And just to explain, this is the psychology of selling. And then I began to go to courses like this. And every single time I took the information, I took action on it immediately. Now, this is so important. You know, many are called, but few are chosen. You've heard that thing. Many people hear these things, but they don't do anything about it. If it was just information that enabled a person to be successful, all librarians would be rich. Because they're surrounded with information, but they don't act on the information. So what I did is I try it out. And then sometimes it didn't work. And by the way, here's something that changed my life. I found that if you try something new for the first time, it doesn't work. Most things don't work anyway. My friend Charlie Jones would tell you that nothing works. But most things don't work the first time you try them out. Peter Drucker says this: most business ideas fail at least the first few times. But what you have to do is try it and try it again and try it again. So I would learn a way to answer an objection or to get an appointment or something else that wouldn't work. I tried again, it wouldn't work. I finally made a decision which changed my life, and I pass it on to you. I would try something 10 times before I pass judgment on it. If it was a good idea, I'd give it 10 tries before I pass judgment. I wouldn't try it once and quit, because that's what everybody else does. Either that or they don't try it at all. So I try it 10 times, and I'd rush out. I learned something new in the morning, I'd rush out, and I'd say, I'm going to talk to 10 people today, and I'm going to try it on all 10. And this is what I found. If it's a good idea, about the 5th or 6th or 7th time, it'll start to work. and then you own it. It becomes an arrow in your quiver. It's a piece of knowledge, it's a piece of skill that you have at the skin level, and you have it for the rest of your career. So I began to practice, and my sales went up and up and up until they made me a sales mangler. They said, you know, whatever you're smoking, find some other people and share it with them because it's working. And so I began recruiting people. I ran ads in the paper and I recruited people and I took them in and I taught them to sell and they went out. And today, all over the world, I meet millionaires and multimillionaires, people who run industries, run multiple industries, who I literally started on the street with no money, stone broke. One of my best guys was in jail. I had to bail him out of jail, get a lawyer, get him off the charges, pay his fine, dress him, and teach him how to sell. Today he's worth about $25 million. I had breakfast with him last year, and we were talking. I called him up. He lives a long way away. Called him up. We had breakfast, and I said, I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished. He's a major power in his community, owns multiple businesses. He's very high up in several of the major organizations. He said, I said, you've done so much with your life. It's phenomenal. He said, yeah. And he looks like this. He said, and I still remember where I started. He said, it was in that jail that you bailed me out of all those years ago. It's not in his bio, by the way. It's not mentioned there. Anyway, so what I found was that you can learn anything you need to learn to achieve any goal that you want for yourself. Now, here's an important point. And for instance, if I asked Dale said to me, Brian, would you give me a call later on this week? And I said, sure, I'll give you a call later on this week. And I'll walk away. Well, what would Dale say? Well, don't you want my phone number? I say, no. What, you live in Phoenix? Phoenix is pretty good. This is simple. Just certain numbers. I'll just punch the buttons till I get through. Punch. Dale, is that you? No? Again, punch. Dale, that's you? No, punch. It's only 7 digits plus an area code. Hey, what could be harder than that, huh? That's you? Now, how long would it take me to get through to Dale if I just punched the buttons at random? You never would. It's hundreds of thousands of millions of words. You know how many Social Security numbers we have? Made up of what? It's 4, 2, 3, 9 digits? Here's 10 digits. In other words, hundreds of millions. I would never get through to Dale. But what if Dale gave me his number and it was 235 1234 and I wrote it down. I got the area code. I could dial Dale from anywhere in the world, and if he was there, I'd get through. And I could give Dale's number. It's Gail. Karen, I'm sure, give it to Karen. Karen would call. I'll give it to you. You could call. If you had the right number, you could get through. Isn't that true? In other words, if you have the number in the right sequence, you can dial from anywhere and you'll get through. But now what if they'll give you the number and it's the last 4 digits are 1, 2, 3, 4, and I wrote them down 1, 3, 2, 4. I got 1 digit out of place. Now that's not very much. You know, 1 crummy digit. I mean, we're talking about, what, 10 numbers here and 1 digit. I shouldn't be penalized for that, should I? But if I tried to get through to Dale with the wrong digits in the wrong order, would I get through? What if I was sincere and hardworking and I set goals and I came to Jim Rohn's seminars and I read books and listened to tapes and I loved the Lord and paid my taxes and was a good family person, but I wasn't dialing the numbers in the right sequence? Would I ever get through? No. This is why people fail, is they may know the right numbers, but they don't have them in the right sequence. Here's an interesting question. If you went to the university, for example, to get a degree in engineering, could you take any courses you wanted? Could you say, well, I'll take a few of these courses after 4 years. Well, I'll take a whole bunch of courses. I like my degree now. They'd laugh in your face, wouldn't they? If you go to get a degree in any subject, what do you have to do? You have to take certain courses in order, in sequence, some before and some after. Some are prerequisites and so on. You have to take the courses in sequence. And only when you've passed all the required courses in sequence do you get your degree. But you get your degree automatically if you've done the courses. That's the key to success. If you want to be successful in real estate or in building your own business, most people run their own business like broken teeth. In other words, they know a little bit about this and a little bit about that and a bit about this, and they can make a couple of sales and negotiate some purchases and so on and so forth. And 86% of business owners in America make less than they would earn if they were working for wages with someone else. Why? It's because they have not learned the entire sequence of building and operating a business. And yet you look at the Fortune 500 companies that are multi-billion-dollar companies, almost everyone started on a kitchen table. You find that one way or another they've learned all the necessary steps, and they do them in the proper sequence. And if you start to do things in the proper sequence, you get through every single time. Are you with me so far? This is really important. It's the difference between success and failure. Anyway, so imagine you went to the dentist and the dentist decided to drill before putting in the anesthesia. I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean, anesthesia, you know, early in the drilling, later in the drilling. Well, would this be a good dentist? No, there's a sequence, for Christ's sakes. Well, how about they drill before they do any x-rays? Let's drill before we do any x-rays. So who knows what tooth needs it? Let's drill them all, you know. That's what people do in selling. They just call them all. What the heck? Who knows if... Anyway, I'm not going to get there. So what I learned is that there's a proper order and sequence. And what I learned was this, and it changed my life. What I learned was the law of cause and effect. Now, the law of cause and effect is called the granddaddy law. It's the iron law of the universe. It says that for every effect in your life, there's a cause. That everything happens for a reason. It says that success is not an accident. Failure is not an accident. Everything happens for a reason. And if you can be clear about the effect that you want, which is why Jim and Dennis talk so much about goals, and I will later, is you can be clear about the effect that you want. You can trace it back to someone who at one time did not have that effect, and then find out what they did, and do the same thing over and over again until you get the same result. As my friend Nito says, success leaves tracks. If you want to follow a person in the snow, you put your feet in their tracks. If you want to find a successful person, if you want to become wealthy, success leaves tracks. Follow the tracks. You got most people who want to become wealthy are trying to make their own trail. You know, don't go where every other person's gone. Go to where no one has gone and blaze a new trail. Yeah. You know what they call a pioneer? A pioneer is someone lying face down in the dirt with their back full of arrows. You know, that's not your goal. If you want to be successful, what you do is you find out hundreds of thousands of millions of people who started from nothing and become wealthy, and you do the same thing. Only after you reach the end of their trail do you begin to make your own trail. But you don't start making your own trail at the beginning. So you do what they do over and over again, and here's what I've learned. Nobody's smarter than you, and nobody's better than you. Nobody's smarter than you, nobody's better. People who are on the fast track are not better than you, they're not smarter than you, some are dumber than you, some have fewer talents, fewer abilities, less intelligence, less opportunities, but they're doing the cause and effect relationships. They're learning from other people. I've spoken to many people who've come over to this country from other countries. I'll give you a great story. I could tell you so many stories. I was doing a talk in Los Angeles. We were doing an infomercial that was being videotaped. They had a studio audience. And during the break, one of the gentlemen in the studio audience stood up and said, I'd like to explain why I'm here to be in this audience while Brian Tracy is making this film. And he was from Pakistan. And he was beautifully dressed. And he stood up. He said, I'm from Pakistan. He spoke very well. He said, I came over to the United States 3 years ago. He said, my uncle and my brother had signed my paper, so he was legal. So he said, I came over here to work with them in their company, and by the time I got everything cleared and I'd gone to university and cleared up and come here, their company had gone broke and they both moved away in different directions. When I arrived in Los Angeles, they were gone, I knew nobody, and I was penniless. He said, I didn't know what to do. He said, I had no idea how to succeed in America. He said, and I was walking along, and one day I walked past the University of Southern California, UCLA, and I had gone to university in Karachi, and I knew a little bit about university, so I sort of drifted onto the campus. I didn't even have a place to stay. He was essentially homeless. He was carrying all of his stuff in a bag. He said, and he went to the dining room where they line up at the cafeteria and they leave their food, and he would sit down next to somebody, and when they were finished, he'd slip over and he'd eat what they hadn't eaten, and this was a good way to get food, and he started to sleep in the bushes on the UCLA campus. In the daytime, he would bundle up his stuff. He'd wash in the bathrooms. He'd hang around the university. He looked like a homeless person, dirty, unkempt, ragged, lousy clothes, typical student. He said nobody didn't even stand out. After he'd been doing this for 2 or 3 weeks, he'd been hanging around the campus, and he was just in despair. He finally went to the counselor, and he said, I need some advice. The counselor said, what's your student number? He said, well, we don't have a student number. The counselor said, well, I can't give you. He told all this story. I'm just fascinated. He said, I can't give you advice or counseling because I have to log in the people that I work with. He said, well, what is the problem? He said, well, I came from Pakistan. He told him his story. He said, I don't know what to do. He said, well, the only thing I can do for you is I will give you this set of Brian Tracy audio programs to listen to. It's a true story. He said, but you can't take them away. I'll give you a tape player. You can sit in this room over here and you can listen to them and take notes. So he didn't have a lot going, if you know. So he said, okay, I'll do that. To him, it was completely bizarre, listening to a bunch of audio cassettes in a cubicle. So he took them over and he sat them down. He got notes from the wastebaskets, and he began making notes. He came back every day for a week. He listened to the programs hour after hour and wrote notes on how to succeed in America. He said, went back at the end of the week, he gave it back to me, he said, thank you. He said, now I understand how you succeed in this country. He walked out. He said that was 2.5 years ago. He walked in. He said, I drove my new Mercedes to this filming. He said, I own 2 companies. I'm worth $2.5 million. He was wearing a Giorgio Armani suit. He had a Rolex watch. It's beautifully turned out. He said, I have a beautiful home. He said, I have 2 businesses. I'm just starting a third. He said, now I know how it works. And now I can do it over and over again. Now, that is a great story from a person who coming from absolutely nothing, and it's a true story, by the way. It's one of those stories that it wasn't true. It should be. Okay. But it's word for word true. Anyway, so the law of cause and effect says that if you do what other successful people do, you get the same results they will. But if you don't do what other successful people do, nothing can help you. So your job and my job, and this changed my whole life. Chris mentioned I started, built, managed, and turned around 22 businesses. I've also consulted with more than 1,000 businesses of every size, Fortune 500 companies in 23 countries. In every single case, I go in order to work with them, I have to study and figure out how this business works. What are the cause and effect relationships? How is money, income, profit generated in this business? What are the constraints that are holding profit back? And so on. And so I've been able to develop a pretty good intellectual foundation in these companies. But what I found is if you do what other successful people do in an industry, you get the same results. Do you know that in business today, the 80-20 rule applies? Is that 20% of businesses make all the money, and the other 80% are marginal, and they all start off at the same starting line, but 20% make all the money. In our society, 20% of the people make all the money, and the other 80% worry about money all their life. So which would you like to be in, the top 20 or the bottom 80? Top 20. Now make the decision to be in the top 20. Then the only question you ask is, how do you get there? Well, here is the turning point for me. As I began to study philosophy and metaphysics, what I found is that thoughts are causes. Thoughts are causes, and conditions are effects. And when I learned this, I couldn't believe it. Thoughts are causes? You mean my thoughts control the conditions of my life? I want to give you one of the simplest of all mathematical formulations. It's this: 1 equals 1. There's a direct relationship between what you think and what happens to you. The quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. Your thoughts are causes and your conditions are effects. In other words, you create your own world by the way you think. And the great philosophers, the great metaphysicians, the great mystical teachers and spiritual teachers and all the religions have come to this conclusion, is that you become what you think about most of the time. You become what you think about most of the time. Now, you've heard this over and over again, but it's absolutely astonishing. You become what you think about most of the time. So the question I have to ask you is, what do you think about most of the time? What they found, self-made millionaires think about becoming financially independent most of the time, starting at a very early age. And every single financial decision they make throughout their years is, will this help me to be financially independent or not? And if it won't, then I won't do it. I just put it off for now, and I'm going to make the decision that will lead to financial independence. Thin people think about being thin most of the time. Fit people think about being fit. Loving people think about being loving. Happy people think about being happy. Are you with me so far? Yes, so what do you think about most of the time? By the way, this principle is true, but it's not always true, because if it was always true, every young man would turn into a young woman by the age of 20. And fat people would turn into pizzas, you know, okay. But you do become what you think about most of the time. So what they did at the University of Pennsylvania is they took 350,000 people like yourselves and myself, entrepreneurs, ambitious, people in sales, people who are going somewhere with their life, and they interviewed them over a 6, 12, 18, 24-month period, and they did psychographic and demographic tests on them, and they asked them the question, what do you think about most of the time? What do you think about most of the time? Now, I said before that you are in an elite, that you're in the top 10%. And how do we know that? It's because you're here. Only the top 10% of adults will ever come to a seminar like this in their whole lives. In fact, I've met people 40 and 50 years old who have never been to a seminar or an adult learning experience after they left school. They have never been to one. It's almost like this world of continuous learning and upgrading of skills runs parallel. It's a parallel universe to them. They don't even participate in it. Many people that you told you were coming to this couldn't believe it. They couldn't understand. Why on earth would you go to something like that? You know all that stuff. Whenever somebody says to me, I know all that stuff, I say, geez, you must be rich. Geez, you must be rich. Could I borrow a mill from you? Because if you know all that stuff, you must be awfully rich. And they look away as they go to catch their bus home. You know. Anyway, so you're in the top 10% because you're here, because you can always tell who a person is by looking at what they do. It's not what they say or wish or hope or attend or declare when they are accepting the nomination at the primary. It's only what they do which is the true test of who they really are. Remember this, there's an awful lot of attempt to fool people by saying, you know, watch my hand, watch my hand. Don't ignore what I do, just watch what I promise to do. No, always just watch what a person does, because what a person does is the true expression of their real values. Only action is action. Anyway, so if the fact that you're here means that you're in the top 10%, not because of thoughts or feelings or wishes or hopes or intentions, but because you're here. You've made the supreme effort and sacrifice to be here. You've made a decision like crossing that line in the Alamo, I'm in the top 10%. Whether you knew it or not doesn't matter. Now you do. You're in the top 10%. The only thing you need to do now is to make it a reality. People say, if you knew how much I was making, you wouldn't say I was in the top 10%. Here's one of the great rules. It doesn't matter where you're coming from in life. All that really matters is where you're going. And you've made the decision to be in the top 10%. Is that true? Say yes. Yes. Good. Okay, it's just a matter of getting there. Now, so they did this study with 350,000 people like you and I. They sliced and diced them by percentiles, the bottom 10%, next 10%, and they took the top 10%. They found people in the top 10% think differently from people in the bottom 80 or 90% in some very profound and life-changing ways. Now, can you imagine how people think and what people think about most of the time in the top 10%? Can you guess? What do people in the top 10% think about most of the time? Well, you're all correct. Every answer is correct. Let me summarize it. They think about what they want and how to get it most of the time. They think about what they want and how to get it most of the time. Unsuccessful people think about what they don't want, what makes them mad and unhappy today and yesterday and when they were children, and who's to blame. Unhappy, unsuccessful people are always talking about what they don't want and who's to blame. Successful people are always talking about what they do want and how to get it. So I'm going to teach you an operative word. This is a word that you're going to use for the rest of your career. This is the word of the high achiever, the self-made millionaire, the truly successful, positive, happy person. The word is how. Say how. From now on, when you ever have a goal, the only question you ask is how. If you have a problem, how do you solve it? Have an obstacle, how do you overcome it? Have a financial goal, how do you achieve it? If you have excess weight, how do you get rid of it? If you want to be healthy, how do you achieve it? The only thing you ask is how. Now, whenever you ask the question how, it forces you to take complete control of your life, to accept responsibility. It raises your self-esteem, gives you a sense of personal power and self-confidence. The word how is almost like a miraculous word, because only action-oriented people ask the word how. Everyone else says, what are you going to do? When's it going to happen? Wah, 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 wah. Ah, shut up. The top people say how. We've got a problem. How do we solve it? Wait till she gets in here. She'll find a solution. Because they know when you come in, they say, we've got a problem. Good. How do we solve it? What's the problem? What do we do? How do we minimize the damage? How do we solve the problem? Not who's to blame and who did this and who should have done that and everything else. Worry about that later, if at all. For now, let's put the fire out. Right? Top people are people like heads of SWAT teams. They say, oh, those nasty people took that building. What are we going to do? We should pass a law. You know, no. What they do is they say, hit a building, kill them all, let God sort them out. You know. Anyway, I'm sorry. That's old programming. We live in California. We sit under triangles and put crystals in our armpits out here. Okay. Light incense and say Om, Om, and the money will come. Om, Om. Yeah, you're going to get a quarter in this hand, a nickel in that hand, and that's all you're going to. Anyway, So what they found is people in the top 10% are people who think about what they want and how to get it most of the time. And that's what your job is, to think about what you want and how to get it. When I talked about getting off the low road onto the high road, the turning point in your life, we say, look at all those people on that high road. Those people are doing so well in life. How do we get onto that road as well? The very fastest way is you find somebody who's successful and you go and say, how would I get onto the same road you're on? And here's the most wonderful thing. You're surrounded by some of the most wonderful people in America. And I'll tell you this, every person in this room, if you ask them, what advice would you give me to be more successful? They'll tell you the best they've got. They wouldn't give you their third best idea. If you turn to the person next to you and you said, what's the very best idea for success that you would share with me based on your experience, they'll give you the best idea they could think of. Here's an exercise I did. I want you to think about the answer to this question. If someone were to ask you, a young person, say, what is the most important success principle you ever learned? What's the most important success principle you learned to help you to be successful? What answer would you give? I was working with a large company. We were doing an international seminar, and I just spontaneously said, I'll tell you what, if everybody here will just write down their answer, their one word of advice, and bring them up here and just put them on the stage at the break, we will take those and we'll publish them all, and everybody who gives us an answer will get the answers from everybody else. We did that. The company's sales went up 500% in the next 3 years because they all had the best success principles for everybody. So if I were to ask you that question, would you have an answer? Yeah. All right. Then what I want you to do is I want you to turn to the person to the right and left of you, and I would say, what would be your answer? What would be the best success principle you could think of if I was to ask you one success idea? What idea would it be? Turn to the person next to you and give them your best idea. Go ahead. Coming back. Now this is an important question. This is an important question. For the rest of this conference, when you introduce yourself to each other, go up and say, hi, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so. What's yours? What's your best idea? You have had so much experience, there's enough wisdom in this room to make everybody here rich 2 or 3 times over. Isn't that true? So therefore, one of the best things... All right. One of the kindest and most generous things you can do is to share your ideas with other people. So whenever you get into a conversation, say, what's yours? What's yours? And this will make a wonderful mastermind conversation. Every time you meet with 2 or 3 people, say, what's yours? And share ideas. And write these ideas down. As Jim says, write them down. Don't let them fly away. And we were talking a little bit earlier about the qualities of success. What they found at the University of Pennsylvania is that the #1 quality of success, they did the psychographic and demographic tests on these people. They found the #1 quality that the top 10% of people had was optimism. As Chris was talking earlier, they're optimistic. They have a positive, constructive attitude toward life. Does it mean they don't get beaten down and make mistakes and fall down and get disappointed and so on? Of course they do, but they bounce back. The major test of how healthy you are as a person is not whether you get knocked down, but how quickly you bounce back, how quickly you recover. If you do a stress test in medicine, what they do is they do a stress test to test your system. The critical question is how quickly do you respond? How quickly do you come back to where you were before? So optimism, we find, is the mark of mental fitness, and mental fitness is like physical fitness. You develop mental fitness by doing mental fitness exercises. And I want to give you the 4 critical exercises for optimists. These are the 4 ways that optimists think that separate them from people who are average or who are pessimistic. Remember, the great majority of people are not particularly positive or optimistic, but all leaders are. So #1 is top people think and talk about what they want most of the time. Whenever you find yourself getting upset, say, wait a minute, I'm going to think and talk about what I want. Your conscious mind can only hold one thought at a time, either a positive thought or a negative thought. If you discipline yourself to think about what you want and how to get it, you push out all negative thoughts for that moment. If you keep doing something repeatedly over and over again, what do you eventually develop? You develop a habit. You know, Donna talked about success habits. It's so important. If you force yourself to think about what you want and how to get it, eventually you get up in the morning, the first thing you think about is what you want and how to get it. Okay? The second way that you become an optimist is you look for the good in every situation and in every person. You always look for the good. Something goes wrong, look for the good. Your house burns down. Well, that's good. We needed a house closer to work anyway. Your car gets stolen. Well, that's good. The ashtrays were full. You know? You lost your job. Well, that's good. We didn't like the job anyway. So, in other words, look for something good in every situation. Now, here's the most remarkable thing. If you look for something good, you'll always find it. You'll always find something good. You find what you're looking for. If you're looking for the problem or the flaw, then you'll find it. If you're looking for something good, you'll find it. Question, does anybody here have a light with a dimmer switch on it at home? Say yes. It's required by law to have dimmer switches in your house. Electrical union. Okay. Now, a dimmer switch has a very interesting parallel. With a dimmer switch, it's controlled manually. You either turn it or move it up or down, and when it's on full, it's bright, and when it's down, it's dark. There's a dimmer switch on your brain as well. Only the dimmer switch on your brain is controlled by your thoughts. And when your thoughts are really positive, your dimmer switch is on full. You're positive, you're creative, you're high energy, you feel good about yourself. In other words, you're positive, you're the best person you could possibly be when your dimmer switch is on full. When your dimmer switch is down low, your personality is darkened, you're angry, you're worried, you're fearful, you're negative, you're pessimistic, you're skeptical, you run for public office and talk about how terrible America is. Okay. But the fact is that your dimmer switch is controlled by the thoughts that you think at any given moment. And if you think about what you want and how to get it, your dimmer switch goes on full. And you have all of your energy available to you. When you think and look for the good in a situation, a difficult situation, you say, that's good. What happens is your dimmer switch goes on full. Now, the third thing you do is you look for the valuable lesson in every setback or difficulty. Napoleon Hill, in his 22-year study of 500 of the most successful people America ever produced, found that one of the qualities they had in common was they always looked for the valuable lesson in every setback or difficulty. Quick question, does anybody here have any problems? Good. Problems are a sign of life and activity. There's only one group of people in our society that has no problems, and they're all in the cemetery. They have no relationship problems, no money problems, no health problems. So if you are having problems, it's a sign of life. All right, so if you have problems. Problems I have found in life are like stacks of dinner plates. And they're stacked up, and some are low down in your hierarchy of concern, and some are higher. But there's always one problem on top. Sort of like a law of priority. There's always one problem that causes you more concern or worry than anything else. This is the one that you can think of. Usually it comes with hair on top. Although there are some exceptions in this room. So I want you to take as an exercise, this is very important by the way, and this is a go-forward exercise for you and your family and other people for the rest of your life. I want you to take the biggest problem you have in life and imagine that this problem has been sent to you containing a lesson. My friend Norman Vincent Peale used to say, when God wants to send you a gift, he wraps it up in a problem. When he wants to send you a big gift, he wraps it up in a big problem. Most people get so preoccupied with the wrapping, they don't look for the gift. The gift is the lesson. And my promise to you is that every problem you'll ever have contains a lesson that is in most cases more valuable than the problem itself. In fact, the lesson may be what you need to learn to become rich and happy. It's almost as if there is a great power in the universe that wants you to be a big success, wants you to be happy and prosperous, but this power knows you can only achieve it if you learn the lessons necessary on the way. So at the exact right time, this power will send you the lesson wrapped up in a problem. Your job of the superior person, is to look into it and say, what am I meant to learn from this problem? What am I meant to learn, and what else am I meant to learn? And what else am I meant to learn? Keep drilling down, because sometimes one big problem contains a whole series of lessons that will profoundly change your life if you can recognize the problems. And as Donna said, by the way, if you don't recognize the solution within the problem, it'll come around again, only this time it'll be more expensive. And if you don't get the lesson then, it'll come around again. This great power will keep sending you the lesson until you get it. And then once you pass that, you go to the next lesson and you have the next problem. So your job is to say, what am I meant to learn from this situation? And my promise to you is you'll always find a lesson, and while you're looking for the lesson, your dimmer switch will be on full. You'll be positive, you'll be optimistic, you'll be forward-thinking, you'll be more creative, you'll be more relaxed, you'll be more open, you'll be the best person you can possibly be. Now, if you want to be a great help to other people, when they are talking about their lives, say, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Help your children, help your staff. When they have a problem, say, what's good in this? Because there's always something good comes from every difficulty. What's the lesson that you're meant to learn from this? You help them to think creatively and positively and optimistically as well until it becomes a habit for them as well. Remember the old saying, you become what you teach. You learn what you teach. So therefore, when you teach these principles to others who can benefit from them, you actually internalize them more and more yourself until they become an automatic part of the way that you deal with life. The fourth key to optimism is to feed your mind continually. Come to courses like this, listen to audio programs, read the books, talk to positive people. Keep feeding your mind. Just like if you wanted to have a healthy body, you'd eat really nutritious foods. If you want to have a healthy mind, take in positive, nutritious, what Jim calls mental protein rather than mental candy. All right? Now, what we have found is that optimists have three remarkable qualities. Optimists, by the way, start off with an unrealistic expectation of success. What does this mean? That means they really expect to be successful in advance. They expect that everything that happens is positive in some way. They expect that every setback contains a lesson. They expect to be wealthy. An attitude of positive self-expectancy, expecting to be successful well in advance of success, improves your attitude, puts your dimmer switch on full, makes you more positive and creative, makes you more resilient to difficulties. You just keep getting up and you keep going like the Energizer Bunny. You just keep going and going and going. So there's three qualities that optimists have. Number one is they learn more things. And you know, we say that in our modern world, cause and effect means learn and do. They learn more things. As a result, they have more knowledge, more information, more insights, more skills, more ability to deal with our world today. Number two is they try more things. Now, I told you that I didn't graduate from high school, but in my 30s, I went to university and got a business degree. And in taking a business degree, you have to take a course called probability theory. Did anybody ever take probability theory? It's a terrible course, isn't it? It's awful, awful course. And the only one thing you learn from probability theory in retrospect is that there's a probability that everything will happen. And that these probabilities, is that true? That these probabilities can be calculated by a series of very, very sophisticated ways. All of life insurance is based on probability. All the stock market, the world of finance, probability is a major, major factor in life. And there's some great theories for probability theory, for predicting probabilities. So here's, if you flip a coin, the probability that it will come down heads or tails is what? It's 50%. 50-50 no matter how many times you flip the coin. The probability never changes. Your job in life is to increase the probabilities of success. Now, how do you increase the probabilities of success? Number one is you learn more things, so you have more understanding. And number two, you try more things. And if I was to tell you the keys to success, you'll find that all successful people try more things. And is there any guarantee that you will be successful? No. You will fail more times than you succeed, but if you try more things, it's like throwing darts at the dartboard. If you keep throwing darts over and over again, even if you're a complete idiot, what must you eventually hit? You must eventually hit a bullseye. And that's why you meet complete idiots who are rich, is they just kept throwing darts and they hit a bullseye. You know that story about the guys get together at the high school reunion after 20 years and the dumbest guy in the class is richer than all of them put together? And they said, how on earth could you do this? I mean, you weren't very much of a student. He said, I found this manufacturer. Comment. Have a financial goal? How do you achieve it? If you have excess weight, how do you get rid of it? If you want to be healthy, how do you achieve it? The only thing you ask is how. Now, whenever you ask the question how, it forces you to take complete control of your life, to accept responsibility. It raises your self-esteem, gives you a sense of personal power and self-confidence. The word how is almost like a miraculous word, because only action-oriented people ask the word how. Everyone else says, what are you going to do? When's it going to happen? Wah, 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 wah. Shut up. The top people say, how? We've got a problem. How do we solve it? Wait till she gets in here. She will find a solution. Because they know when you come in, they say, we've got a problem. Good. How do we solve it? What's the problem? What do we do? How do we minimize the damage? How do we solve the problem? Not who's to blame and who did this and who should have done that and everything else. Worry about that later, if at all. For now, let's put the fire out. Right? Top people